So
Greetings and peace, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. Today, I have the honor and privilege of being joined by my brother Bashir Mark, who is a Masonic past master, and he's someone who has extensively studied the history of Chinese societies and the histories of Chinese secret societies. And I'm very grateful that he is joining us on this platform to give us this education that no one else will talk about. Again, we represent ourselves only. We don't represent any Grand Lodge statements or opinions. We are representing ourselves as free men under free speech. So without further ado, thank you so much, Brother Bashir, and I'm looking forward to enjoying your presentation.
thank you, Brother Salman, and good morning. Today, I'll be talking about the history of China's secret society. So what it is, the objective for this is that we're going to talk about the history of secret society, the myth of the Shao monks, and the Chinese Freemasonry in North America. So we're going to start with the Carnation-Painted Eyebrow Society. This happened about 2,000 years ago. They ruled China by banditry. And then they were defeated by loyal troops known as the Yellow Turban Rebels in northern China. The leader was Quan Yu, who led against the Yellow Turban Rebels, along with two warriors who liberated against them as well. He is defied as the god of war. He is known as the patron of secret societies in China, and his famous quote is, "We 108 persons assembled in this hell, regard the stars as our brothers and heaven and on earth as our mother and father. Every heart is spotless. We bind ourselves to share each other's happiness and sorrows. May heaven and all the stars look down upon us as we swear." So this is one of the oaths that he made with his warriors, known as his brothers. And this is the start of what we would know as secret society code. 200 years later, we have the White Lotus Society. They are claimed royal descendants. They also are known as Red Turbans. They have this, what they call the Buddhist Messiah as their leader, along with three powerful chiefs. They are semi-criminal. They are pretenses of being religious sects. They are supported by the Ming Dynasty. Ming actually means light in society, and they contain patriotic and royalist myths. So a lot of mythical stories come out of this White Lotus Society. They are semi-criminal because they are for the Ming Dynasty. They would do anything that the Ming Dynasty would do to protect the emperor. So these are basically hired assassins made by the emperor to do his duties and will of this. So the nobles would use this White Lotus Society, which is supported by the Ming Dynasty because, as you know, Ming during this time has a very, very strong esoteric enlightenment in China. There's a lot of things going around in Ming Dynasties. Mythical stories came out of this, as well as a lot of mythical writings. One of these writings, of course, is Journey to the West, which is a very esoteric, long-winded, required reading in China because it is so powerful regarding to this mythology of royalism, mythology of spiritualism. There's a lot of mythology in there that is written during that time. There's also the Enlightenment period, of course, in Salman's previous video on Islam, especially when we talked about Admiral Zhang He and his spread of Islam around the world. So Islam actually is another enlightened period in China during this time. This is happening between 1300 to 1664 AD. So we're looking at almost 300 years of Ming Dynasty enlightenment period, especially flourishing for the Muslims, Buddhism, Confucianism, as well as Taoism, but mainly Islam. That's where the prominent time period for this of enlightenment period, because we have a lot of Islamic scholars that come up from China during this time period, as well as a lot of different things. So there's a lot of parallels between your previous videos on regarding to Islam, especially with Admiral Zhang He, because he appeared during this time period during the Ming Dynasty. So Ming is very, very important, and it's going to be more important later on, because of what further on. Now we have going to the 1814 to 1899 Boxer Rebellion. So these are the following names that are used by the Triad: White Lotus, White Feather, the 3 Instant Sticks, the 8 Diagram, the Rationalists. So these are going into the Qing Dynasty, where the Qing Dynasty have overtaken and now they've been ruling. Qing Dynasty is the last dynasty of China, and but during the 1814 to 1899, these are the big time wars. Even though they've been in control since the later of the 1600s going forward. Initiations, they rebelled against the kingdom. Initiations were devised and rigidly practiced. Now you have the Boxer Rebellion of 1899. Following names have been used: Fist for Protection Society, Fist for Righteous Harmony, Big Sword Society, and these are training based on fighting monks at the Shaolin Monastery. Now this is a Boxer Rebellion is against basically, make the long story short, it's West versus East. So Western people have come in, especially from US, Europe, Christianizing the country. Now this is a problem because, coming from Ming, you had Islam, Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism rising, especially Muslims. So now you have this war going on between East versus West. And this is what caused the burning of the West made by these people from the East. They were claiming that they are the followers of the Shaolin Monastery. The Shaolins is really interesting because we don't know how they were formed or anything, but there's a story about them and coming from the Ming Dynasty. And this is the myth of what they call the myth of the Shaolin Monastery. Some of this myth might not be, this is the mythical side of the story. There is a historical side of the story. Within this mythical, it is also the historical. So what we know about the Shaolin Monastery is that, yes, it was established in the year 1674, around that time period. This may be earlier because some of these people were used by the Mings. So, there's a lot of historical facts about that. And that was, I've given that presentation I have given that presentation before in previous talks. But this is in lodges, of course, in closed lodges because of the nature of the topic. These were brothers who were initiated and taught those come to seek knowledge, and then institution became famous palaces for religious military importance. So not only they're going to do spiritual, they're also learning how to fight warfare. So this is why the Mings are very, very good at this. Why they consider semi-criminal is that because they're using the religious institutions as a fighting ground for this. So that's why you see a lot of Kung Fu movies. If you notice that the Kung Fu movies, especially if you watched during World War II, World War II is a prominent one because you will see that the Shaolins fighting the Japanese. And believe it or not, the Shaolins are not dressed like monks; they're dressed like Muslims. So they wear the kufis, they wear the they have the kufis on their heads. They fight, and people think, oh, they're Buddhists. No, they're not Buddhists. They actually are Muslims. So the Shaolins are could be what we, as followers of the Saladin time period where they taught the Templars. So this is going backwards now, going backwards in time. A lot of this influence of Islam came from assassins. So this is something that we've you and I spoke about this. You did videos about this before about the Templar story. Well, this is the East version of the Templar story here in China. Once again, where did they learn this from? They probably learned this from the Muslims. Islam was very, very early in China. There'll be a talk about that in future that I'm working on with the history of Islam in China. So, but these are very, very, the societies here are very, very similar to what you have done in the videos in the past, Salman, regarding to, talk about, the assassins and the story of the assassins and everything. Well, it's the same here in the East, as we see. The foreign prince invaded China. Of course, the emperor came out, asked these monks to defend the country. The monks did it. They defended the country. and the emperor offered them anything they desired. The monks didn't want anything because they were humble. So the monks received tablets and scrolls. The tablets described the imperial favor, kingdom, and honor. And the scroll was inscribed first in bravery, matchless heroes. And it was not by learning they got to court, through warfare skill they saw the emperor. Because the emperor was so impressed by their skill in military tactics. Later on, there were two traitors in the court who warned the emperor about the monks. The traitors pretended to learn from the monks, and they received access to the monastery, their hidden monastery. And without warning, they set the monastery on fire. The founder of the order saw the flames, and they ascended to heaven and summoned two other immortals to help community. So very similar about ascensions and magic, and this is the mythical side of the monastery. This enabled 18 members to escape, including one who holds the Emperor Triangular Seal. Once again, the triangle factor. The triangular seal, and 13 died while escaping. In memory of the treacherous occurrence, all members cursed their opponents and vowed to destroy them, for they're considered to be like the traitor, just as the present members are like the monks. So in other words, is that when giving when they tell the story through initiation, the myth of the Shao Monastery. This story is given to them, and talking about who they are when you're initiating into the secret society, of who you are. You are the monk, you are the victim. So you are cursing your opponents because they are the traitors that they are, and that you are the victims. You are now the five. There are 5 patriarchs saved by a certain boatman, and this is where they learn secret signs. So these 5 patriarchs taught sacred signs into this boatman. So the boatman was actually ended up being one of the people that helped. When they were being ambushed, a miraculous sword appeared, just as they were being ambushed and inscribed. This is why this is important. It says, subvert the Sing and restore the Ming. So now you're talking about the Ming Dynasty. Once again, it goes back to Ming. Why? Because Ming was the emperor who brought all of this enlightenment, because he's the light. So Ming is the light. That's why you have a very strong a strong presence of enlightenment, because Ming means light. That's why Ming Dynasty means the light dynasty, the enlightenment period of China. So that's a big important factor why it says subvert the Sing and restore the Ming. The monks perform miracles with the sword and defeated the enemies. So this miraculous sword appears, and it happens. This story is also found in Mahayana Buddhism. So the sword of miracles is one of the Bodhisattva's weapon. So in Mahayana Buddhism, yes, they talk about the Shaolin story as well. They have their own version, but the miraculous sword as well is also found in Mahayana Buddhism. The 5 patriarchs are known as the 5 Tiger Generals. So now they changed their names to 5 Tiger Generals. Now the big founder, they're saying that the monks met Chen Chinen, who is the founder of the Triad Society. So now we're talking about what we know. They gave them spacious building known as the Red Flower Pavilion, where rites and the practice of warfare is being practiced. So they have initiation rites as well as the fighting skills. The monks saw a large stone tripod with incense burner and 2 ears. On the bottom it said Fan Sing Fu Ming, subvert Sing and restore Ming. So this message is being prominent of restoring the Ming Dynasty. So now it says they carried the stone to the altar where twigs were placed and miraculously ignited themselves. So the fire caused themselves because it's light. They saw the light. The monks prayed for guidance and were told that they must obey the inscription on the stone, which is they subvert the Sing and restore the Ming. The monks consulted Chen, and he issued the call to arms. And then, once again, if you go backwards, now you're saying the number 108. Kuan Yu used 108. Now you're going back to Chen, who used 108. So 108 is a big number. 1 plus 8, 108 is 9. 9 is the perfection of God. So, they responded, and Lin, Ella.
Oh, hold on.
Who is a descendant of the Mins.
Hey, Brian, repeat the last 20 or 30 seconds, please. I think it got cut off.
Okay, so 108 is prominent because before we had 108 with Kuan Yu. Now we have 108 with Chen.
Got it.
And of course, if you like numerology, 1 plus 0 plus 8 is 9. Of course, 9 is a big significant number. In talking about God's perfection. So 9 is very, very important. So this is what happens. So now this is like the perfected. Now this is now what they call the perfection. The red flower pavilion is now called a lodge. And this is what they come from. The Hung Society comes from this. This red flower pavilion is now called the Hung Society. And Hung is signified a flood in red because they overwhelmed China like the flood, and the sky turned red at the time of call to arms. So the Hung Society is something that when I did talk in closed lodges, that's a very prominent, very, very prominent. So here's your this is your another as your favorite esoteric knowledge here. They are known as a brotherhood of heaven and earth, derived of the 3 elements: heaven, earth, and man. There you go. The triangular seal was heaven, earth, and man. So now they are calling themselves the Brotherhood of Heaven, Earth, and Man, which is derived from the 3 elements: heaven, earth, and man. And of course, we spoke about this. Heaven, earth, and man came from a Chinese philosophy concept made by Confucius a long time ago. So now we're seeing this. 5 monks each established 5 provincial grand lodges. These are independent of each other. There is no main grand lodge. So these are 5 independent lodges. And here are some of their principles: forbid adultery, forbid committing a crime, forbid obtaining money for arrest of a monk, forbid falsely claiming a superior rank in society, forbid parting his book of ceremonies or certificate of membership, forbid stealing, forbid failure to respond to a call, and forbid non-payment of dues. What does that sound like?
That's Freemasonry.
Yeah, that's what it is. So the monks, they will receive to respond to a call. So how they get the call? They write it written on a bamboo stick.
The summons.
The summons is a bamboo stick summons, and that's how they get the call. So if you're a member of this, you will receive a bamboo stick of the place and time. And we didn't know where the lodge is because there's only 5 provincial lodges. So you go to that lodge. So if you're in that province area, there are 5 different provinces. So you go to that provincial lodge. So if you live in province A, you go to and you receive a summons, you go to the lodge of province A because that's the one who summons you, because you go to your provincial lodge. So you don't go to the nearest lodge, you go to the provincial lodge, which basically is the nearest one, because if you live in this certain province, you go to that province lodge. You go to this province, you go to that province lodge. And these are based on the 5 surviving monks of the Shaolin who became the grandmasters of these lodges. And of course, Chen, of course, is the head grandmaster, and then you have all these 5 lodges. So that's where this come from. So the Triad Society today, they are dedicated to acquisition of money and power. Middle of 20th century, they are appearing without restraint. During this time was also the Triads also worked with the Communist Party in defeating the Japanese. So these Triad societies, they work for the government. They're nothing but government agents. The government uses them for their purposes and their means. The government allows them Right now, currently, some people in Hong Kong saying, "Oh, the Hong Kong protests are formulated by the Triad." The Triad went out to protesters. Well, because the government are backed them. That is sort of true. The government this happens all the time during the emperor time. Emperor time, the emperor recognizes these people and they will use them to their bidding. That's what it is. They will use them and they will provide them with everything they want. Anything you want, the emperor will give it to you. So these are, like I said, the Triad today are one of the most ancient, going backwards 2,000 years. They're the most developed organized crime in society today. They're the oldest. Just want to talk about this one to give you an overview of what the Triad has been used in the previous past. So that's one argument that people have really saw in the Hong Kong protest. When they say, "Oh, the Triads Triads went after the protesters and they were backed by the government." Is that true? It could be, because knowing the history, the government could do that. Talking about Chinese Freemasonry in North America and Europe, as you know, Freemasonry is banned in China. You cannot be a Freemason in China. Hong Kong Lodge is under scrutiny right now, even though Hong Kong Lodge is recognized a lot of England, because now they're in autonomous with the Chinese government. It's going to be under scrutiny. This is established. Most of these have been established, and especially in North America during the gold rush and building of the railroad. They follow the Hung Society. So they are claiming that they are the original Hung Societies. All of these lodges that you see here, especially here in Philadelphia, Vancouver, as you see here, this is a Vancouver picture. And this one here is New York. So the reason what they wrote it is keeping tradition of the Shaolin Monastery. Shaolin Monastery actually did practices of the warfare, along with the warfare, of course, in our Chinese culture is the lion dance performance. That is a performance that is done mostly learning Kung Fu. The stance of the dance itself is Kung Fu Shaolin related. So, Lunar New Year being now, this is a very prominent thing that that a lot of the Chinese Freemasons are doing, going out, collecting money from the community to support the community, because what they do is they continue to support the community. Also, just to let you know, Chinese Freemasons is not just for men, it's also for women. So a woman can be a member in certain providential, it all depends on each lodge. Like I said, each lodge is independency. So New York may not accept women, but Vancouver will. So you never know. You have to, like I said, for those, each of them are its own independence. There is no relation to each other. There is no grand lodge of when they have Chinese Freemasons in UK, Chinese Freemasons in New York, Philadelphia, Tampa, San Francisco. They're all independent. They're not together. They do their own independent thing. They follow the rules of the society and they do things for their communities. So that's all I want to. That's hopefully shed some light on the history of secret societies. Hopefully that presentation shed some light for those who are interested in learning about.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Bashir.
Yeah.
Brother Bashir, that was truly beautiful. And what else can you share with us in terms of the Earthman and heaven, and how the aspect of how you have Nuba and Fuxi in Chinese mythology, and how they say the square and compass, there's no origin besides 1717, but that painting that was found in the Ming and Han dynasties is 2,000 years before the 1717 origin story of Nuba and Fuxi holding the square and compasses. So how is that tied in with the Earthman and heaven?
Well, the Earthman in heaven is, if you think about it, there were three elements when they formulate the square and the compass. One of them created society. The other one created the heavens. So that's how it is. The circle is the heavens, and the square was the earth. That's what it is. So Earthman in heaven. The square in this philosophy is your earth and man,
Mhm.
because society was created from the earth. And the
Mhm.
compass, of course, is the heavens.
Got it.
So, the earth is square, according to Chinese. The earth is square, not round,
Mhm.
in esoteric. And this heavens is circular.
Got it. So
So,
it's like one realm on top of the other, where
mhm,
one can be square, the other can be circular. So
right.
that's the way that they see it in their point of view.
Exactly. They see in their point of view. I gave this lecture to a lodge about that, esoteric knowledge and stuff like that. And that, of course, and we talked about the seven heavens. There are seven heavens and seven hells in this philosophy. That's very similar to Islam. Islam has seven heavens, seven hells. So, that parallel going back to Sufism, it goes right back to Sufism. Seven heavens, seven hells is a topic of Sufism, but it's also found in Chinese philosophy, made by Confucius and all the other followers of this of him. So these are a lot of different. There's a lot of different teachings about that, but the square and compass, that's where the square is your heaven and is your man and earth, and because that's square, the earth is created by the square, and the earth was from that square created man and created society, and the circle is the heavens.
Got it. Got it. Thank you so much for that. What else can we learn in terms of the knowledge that we have in fraternal groups today or spiritual groups today? What is it that's lacking here in the West that we can learn from the Chinese?
What the Chinese have done is less about individualism, and it's
Mhm.
more about community.
Yes.
So that's a big, huge difference. The way of thinking. When you look at the perfect example is COVID numbers. If you look at our COVID numbers, it's much higher here in compared to, for example, Indonesia.
Mhm.
Indonesia's numbers is the same amount of, like, New York State has almost equivalency or more COVID cases than
Mhm.
Indonesia. And Indonesia has 225 million people.
Mhm.
That's higher than New York. Why is it that their numbers are lower? Their death rate is lower than they are in New York? Well, because it's all about community. They fight for the community and not for individualism.
Mhm.
So the people there, they're all about community. They're not about for individual. They're the thinking wise. The majority of the thinking is family oriented, community oriented. While over here is more about individualism, less about the society, more about the self. So it's about self versus not self. That's something that East, when dealing with East, that's the thinking that they have. So that's something we could learn from, is that we how we could better ourselves is to lower ourselves and be more open to others. And that's something that the spirituality, a lot of spiritualities were saying, over no matter what religion you're saying, they always say that always care for your neighbor, love thy neighbor. So there's more about community than self, and a lot of the religions are saying that, but we don't practice that ourselves because we have our egos, and we need to cut our egos in order to express community care.
Thank you. Thank you. And my next question is, why doesn't the Western world or Western Masonic biographers do not give credit to China for having the Confucius philosophy, the Earthman in heaven, Nuwa and Fuxi with the squaring compasses? So why don't the Chinese get their due credit in terms of already having these things in existence?
Well, there's one thing. It just happens back during the Opium Wars. What they view as the Triad Society, they look at them as criminals because of what they have done, with the opium trade and so forth. So they don't look at, back then when they look at these societies, they look at them as the criminal aspect, and that's what they receive now. Historically, they actually there were a lot of in the West, especially Grand Lodges in Australia, who did talks about history of Chinese Freemasonry. They actually said that they're the same. However, it is our biasness and remembrance of the Opium War that don't allow us to be together. And that was written by one of the brothers in early 1900s who want to, have that close gap. But because of, the similarities are very, very, very similar. The belief of a higher being, the square and compass, the letter G, everything's the same. The story's a little bit different, but the principles are the same. The principles and values are the same. They do the penalties of the for not following the oath is very similar in nature. They just have a different story, but it's very similar in nature. So he's saying that it's the same process, same thing about, bringing from darkness to light. They're doing it their way versus our way is the same. It's similar in teachings, even though they do a little bit ritually differently. If you look at, rituals, each state does their own little rituals differently. So, why can't we belong to them is because of this biasness that we have towards the Triad society, where they said, oh, these people are, are gang related, semi-criminal related. So that's a big, huge factor of that.
Thank you, my brother. And what else would you like to address if there's something that I have not mentioned or asked you about what we can learn from Chinese philosophy and Chinese secret societies in today's chaotic world that we're in? So please, anything that I've failed to ask you.
Sure. One thing about what it is in Chinese philosophy is, if you actually read and study the Journey to the West, it's a very, very interesting story. Journey to the West is not just a monk who's trying to follow the path, but it's also talking about the inward journey, the traveling journey of the seven hells and the seven heavens. That itself is a interesting topic itself, and it's relatable because it's you can relate that to a person's journey, because you got to go within yourself, and within yourself there is dirt, within yourself there's light. You have to overcome your own personal battles of self, ego, pride, lust, all these things you must able to defeat in order to bring yourself to light. So it's a very, very inward battle that you go through. And Journey to the West, is a very interesting story because, like I said, very, very esoteric. Because it mixes a lot of different concepts. And with that being said, that is itself and I highly recommend anyone to find the 4 volumes. They do have it in English, and to read it, because it's a very highly recommended book made by, and it's actually a mandatory reading in China. Chinese literature, that's a mandatory reading, just to show the power and enlightenment of the Ming Dynasty. Why Ming is so important, why Ming dynasty is so important, is because it was the Enlightenment period of China, and it is a rise of Sufism in China. So that's something that is very, very, I think it's very important to acknowledge, because we don't talk about this. The Chinese people don't talk about this, but reading the book itself and studying Ming and the Enlightenment period of Ming, just give you a shining of light of the Eastern philosophy and the Eastern teachings. And this is way before 1700. You're talking about the 1300s to the 1600s. So where Western exploration was coming, the Chinese already been doing their own explorations prior to this. So during that period of time, the Chinese have been visiting Indonesia, visiting Hawaii, visited the Middle East, visited Africa. They already been there. They went to Europe. They went to North America. So that's something that a lot of people don't realize, that they have experienced travel in the past, going through the different places, and looking at now why the Belt Road Initiative of China is important to them is because they were trying to reinvent the Ming Dynasty trade route. So that's another thing that people don't understand about this Belt Initiative. Why they're doing this Belt Initiative is that because they were the trade of the world prior to the Europeans, and they want to reestablish themselves as that. That's why they would create this Belt Initiative to reopen that Silk Road path, to reopen all the trade routes, and to do what it takes to restore the Ming, which was the Enlightenment period. They're trying to restore Ming. So that's another thing that what people don't realize about Chinese politics is that when you're looking at it from a historical standpoint, what they're doing, this is their history. They're trying to reopen their history. They're trying to repeat their past, their success in the past. What made them successful in the past, and what made them, in the East, what made them so strong back then? They're trying to reinvent, and that is something that we need to be aware of, be acknowledged of, and be mindful of, to understanding what they're doing. So what they're doing actually is going back to what the Mings have done during that time, trading with South America, trading with Africa, trading with the Middle East, building infrastructure. That's what they did. They've done that before. They built infrastructure. They built posts. They built trade routes. They built ports. That's what they have done. With like you said in the video of Admiral Zhang He. Admiral Zhang He went around, traded with people, and built ports along the way. He built establishments. So that's what they're trying to restore backwards. So when you're saying like subvert the Qing and restore the Ming, they're actually trying to restore Ming, the Ming of Enlightenment. So that's what that's another esoteric level. But the way I see it, from a different point of view, that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, my brother. Thank you. And how do we see the aspect of, let's say, the Triad Society and Chinese Freemasonry? Is there anything you can share with us about that?
Well, they're different. Triad Society is different than the Chinese Freemasonry. Chinese Freemasonry is totally different. You have, it's hung. It's what they call hung society, and the triads themselves are not hung society. So that's something that they're two different things. What they want to bring in is a hung society. If we're gonna ever be together, you want to make it with the hungs. When like I said, during the gold rush and the building of the railroad here in America, most of the people who came here were men sending money back to China. They established themselves here in America. So what they have done is to help each other for immigration purposes. They formed the Chinese Freemasonry Lodge, and they followed the hungs built by that. So and people felt that was a threat. Building these kind of places, they felt threatened. Why? Because it's something different. So when people are different, building something different, you feel threatened. And that's the problem. What we have in society is we don't understand each other. We tend to make assumptions, and we tend to discriminate and judge based on the cover, not the understanding. That's not not the understanding of understanding each other, even though we're different. Learn to understand each other. So I think that's a major problem that we see. Is that people don't understand each other. They just judge the people by the cover of the book and not understanding where they're coming from. And we see that everywhere.
And it's interesting you point that out, because even in Freemasonry in the West, I mean, Freemasonry in its true esoteric Eastern teachings prohibits any kind of individualism. So even in the West, you need a guide, you need a mentor. You can't join by yourself. You need to be voted on. So all of these things that are there shows you that it's a collective effort of a society and not the aspect of the individualistic self for those that have the eyes to see and recognize that. So I'm glad you pointed that difference out between the East and the West, my brother. And again, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. I thank you so, so much, my brother, for coming on this channel and sharing this beautiful presentation. Thank you, and thank you.
Oh, you're welcome anytime.